In the gleaming halls of Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, a dream took shape that would captivate Japan's aviation industry for over a decade. It was a dream of returning to the skies, of reclaiming a place among the world's great aircraft manufacturers. The Mitsubishi SpaceJet, originally known as the Mitsubishi Regional Jet, promised to be Japan's triumphant return to commercial aviation after nearly half a century away from the industry. But this dream would become one of the most expensive failures in aviation history. To understand the magnitude of this failure, we need to go back to the beginning. Japan had once been a formidable presence in aviation, but after World War II, the nation's focus shifted toward other industries, and for decades, Japanese companies played supporting roles in aviation, manufacturing components and parts for other companies' aircraft rather than building their own. By the early 2000s, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries believed the time had come to change that narrative. The initial announcement came in 2008, and the vision was clear: create a next-generation regional jet that would compete with established players like Brazil's Embraer and Canada's Bombardier. The aircraft would seat 70 to 90 passengers, perfect for regional routes. It would be fuel-efficient, comfortable, and built with the precision and quality that Japanese manufacturing was famous for worldwide. Orders began coming in from airlines eager to modernize their fleets. Launch customer All Nippon Airways placed an order, and other airlines followed. Everything seemed to be falling into place. The first major milestone was supposed to be the maiden flight, scheduled for 2011. But 2011 came and went. Then 2012, then 2013. The aircraft remained firmly on the ground, undergoing endless testing and modifications. Engineers discovered problems with the aircraft systems. Supply chain issues emerged. The complexity of integrating modern avionics and flight control systems proved more challenging than anticipated. Each delay cost money, lots of it, and began to erode confidence in the program. When the MRJ finally took to the skies for its first flight in November 2015, it was already 4 years behind schedule. There was relief at Mitsubishi, certainly, but also a growing awareness that the real challenges still lay ahead. Flying a prototype is one thing. Getting an aircraft certified for commercial service is something else entirely, and this is where the SpaceJet program would encounter its most formidable obstacle. Aircraft certification is perhaps the most demanding regulatory process in any industry. Aviation authorities like the Federal Aviation Administration in the United States and the European Union Aviation Safety Agency have incredibly stringent requirements, and for good reason. Every system, every component, every scenario must be tested, documented, and proven safe. The paperwork alone can fill warehouses. For a company that hadn't brought a commercial jet to market in decades, Mitsubishi was essentially learning this process from scratch. The certification struggle became the program's defining characteristic. Mitsubishi had experience building aircraft components and had even produced aircraft under license, but designing, building, and certifying an entirely new commercial airliner from the ground up was a different beast altogether. The company didn't have the institutional knowledge that Boeing or Airbus had accumulated over decades of continuous aircraft production. Every problem that arose required solutions that more experienced manufacturers might have anticipated and addressed during the design phase. One of the critical issues was that much of the SpaceJet's development had been done in Japan, but the aircraft needed FAA certification to access the crucial American market. This meant Mitsubishi had to navigate not just technical requirements, but also the complex bureaucratic processes of a foreign regulatory agency. The company established a significant presence in the United States, setting up testing facilities and hiring American engineers and certification specialists. But bridging the gap between Japanese design approaches and American regulatory expectations proved more difficult than anyone had anticipated. The delays kept mounting. What was supposed to be a 2013 entry into service became 2017, then 2020, then sometime beyond that. Each postponement meant maintaining a workforce, keeping facilities operational, and watching as development costs spiraled upward. Airlines that had placed orders grew impatient. Some canceled. Others pushed their delivery dates further into the future, adopting a wait-and-see approach. The business case for the aircraft, once so promising, began to crumble under the weight of delays and uncertainty. By the time 2020 arrived, Mitsubishi had built 8 prototypes, 7 of the larger MRJ 90 variant and 1 of the smaller MRJ 70. These aircraft had accumulated thousands of flight hours during testing. Engineers had solved countless technical problems. The aircraft itself was by most accounts a well-designed, capable regional jet. But it still didn't have the certifications needed to enter commercial service. And then the world changed overnight. The COVID-19 pandemic devastated global aviation in ways that no one had anticipated. Airlines grounded their fleets. Passenger numbers collapsed. Orders for new aircraft evaporated as carriers fought simply to survive. The aviation industry entered its worst crisis in history, and the already struggling SpaceJet program found itself in an impossible position. In October 2020, Mitsubishi announced it was pausing development activities. The company didn't officially cancel the program at that point, but the writing was on the wall. For nearly 3 years, the SpaceJet existed in a state of limbo. The prototype sat quietly in hangars. The engineering teams that had dedicated years of their careers to the program were reassigned or let go. Mitsubishi continued to evaluate the program's future, but as the aviation industry slowly recovered from the pandemic, it became clear that the market had changed. Airlines were focusing on larger, more efficient aircraft. The regional jet market that had seemed so promising in 2008 looked very different in 2023. In February 2023, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries made it official. The SpaceJet program was canceled. After 15 years of development, 6 major delays, approximately 1 trillion yen spent, equivalent to about $7.6 billion US, and 0 aircraft delivered to customers, Japan's return to commercial aviation manufacturing was over. The announcement was delivered in the understated language of corporate press releases, but the implications were enormous. What went wrong? The easy answer is to point to the certification challenges, the delays, and the pandemic. But the reality is more complex and more instructive. The SpaceJet failure reveals fundamental truths about the modern aviation industry and the immense barriers to entry that exist today. First, there's the issue of institutional knowledge. Building commercial aircraft isn't just about engineering capability. It's about understanding the entire ecosystem of certification, production, supply chain management, and customer support. Boeing and Airbus have this knowledge embedded in their organizations, accumulated over decades of continuous production. Mitsubishi tried to acquire this knowledge quickly, but some things can't be rushed or bought. The company was essentially trying to compress decades of learning into a few years, and the gaps in that knowledge manifested as delays and problems. Second, the regulatory environment for aviation has become increasingly complex. This is generally a good thing for safety, but it raises the barriers to entry enormously. The certification requirements that exist today are far more demanding than those from decades past, reflecting lessons learned from accidents and incidents over the years. A newcomer to the industry faces a mountain of requirements that established manufacturers have already learned to navigate. For Mitsubishi, this proved to be an insurmountable challenge within the time frame and budget they had allocated. Third, there's the question of market timing. When the SpaceJet program launched in 2008, the regional jet market looked robust. Airlines were buying these aircraft to serve smaller cities and thin routes, but markets evolve. By the time the SpaceJet was supposed to enter service, airlines were increasingly favoring larger, more versatile aircraft that could serve multiple mission profiles. The pandemic accelerated this trend as carriers consolidated routes and focused on their most profitable operations. The niche that the SpaceJet was designed to fill had partially closed. The human cost of the program's failure shouldn't be overlooked either. Thousands of engineers, technicians, and support staff dedicated years of their lives to making the SpaceJet a success. Many of these people believed deeply in the project and worked tirelessly to overcome each obstacle. The cancellation meant not just the end of a program, but the end of career aspirations and professional dreams for many involved. So what happens now to Japan's aviation ambitions? Interestingly, the story doesn't end entirely with failure. The Japanese government, taking stock of the lessons learned from the SpaceJet program, announced in 2024 that it was laying groundwork for designing a new indigenous airliner. This suggests that despite the costly setback, Japan hasn't completely abandoned its aspirations to return to commercial aircraft manufacturing. The question is, whether the lessons learned from the SpaceJet will be enough to ensure success the next time around. As for the aircraft themselves, one of the prototypes will be preserved and put on display at the Aichi Museum of Flight, starting in late 2026. It will stand as a testament to ambition, to the challenges of modern aviation manufacturing, and to one of the most expensive failures in Japanese industrial history. Visitors will be able to see up close an aircraft that flew thousands of hours in testing, but never carried a single paying passenger. The Mitsubishi SpaceJet stands as a cautionary tale in the modern aviation industry. It demonstrates that success in this field requires more than just engineering excellence or manufacturing capability. It requires patient capital, deep institutional knowledge, effective navigation of complex regulatory environments, and perhaps most importantly, favorable market timing. Mitsubishi had the engineering talent and the financial resources, but these alone weren't enough. The barriers to entry in commercial aviation have grown so high that even a company with Mitsubishi's capabilities and resources couldn't overcome them in a reasonable time frame. For the aviation industry as a whole, the SpaceJet failure reinforces the dominance of the existing players. Boeing and Airbus compete in the larger aircraft market, while companies like Embraer and Bombardier, now part of Airbus, hold strong positions in the regional jet space. The failure of well-funded newcomers like the SpaceJet suggests that this structure is likely to persist for the foreseeable future. The investment required to break into commercial aviation is simply too large, the risks too great, and the barriers to entry too high for most potential competitors. Yet perhaps there's value in ambitious failures. The SpaceJet program advanced Japanese aerospace engineering capabilities, even if it didn't produce a commercially successful aircraft. The thousands of people who worked on the program gained experience and knowledge that remains valuable. The lessons learned about certification, supply chain management, and program management will inform future endeavors, whether in aviation or other complex industries. As we look back on the Mitsubishi SpaceJet saga, we see a story that's ultimately very human. The story of ambition reaching beyond grasp, of dreams that proved more difficult to realize than imagined, of perseverance in the face of mounting obstacles, and finally, of the wisdom to know when to stop. It's a trillion-yen lesson in the realities of modern aviation manufacturing, and one that won't soon be forgotten in the boardrooms of companies contemplating entry into this most challenging of industries.